It's Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown.
Back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the sideline. Foot race. House call. Touchdown. 79 yards.
Big one in the Peach Bowl. This is a big one, too. And it's going to go all the way to the house on the first play from scrimmage.
Bearcat Blitz. The show keeps rolling here into the middle of August, getting to the midway point of August, and almost a 2-week window away from the Cincinnati Bearcats football team kicking off their 2025 season against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host of Bearcat Blitz, Russ Heltman, joined as always by my co-host Neil Meyer. He's from the frontofficenews.com. I'm from Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, and Bearcat Blitz is presented by our wonderful presenting sponsor, FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, where the Cincinnati Bearcats currently sit near kind of the bottom of the Big 12 odds to win the conference at the end of the football season. 33-1 odds, only ahead of UCF, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Arizona is Cincinnati. So $10 bet would net you $330 in winnings if the Bearcats can lift the Big 12 championship trophy at the end of the 2025 season. Check out FanDuel Sportsbook for those odds, game odds for week 1, and odds relating to golf, college football, NFL, Major League Baseball, all the major sports in America available to wager on with our wonderful presenting sponsor, FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Head there today to see what they have in terms of odds, offers, boosts, and more on the platform. Bearcat Blitz is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll get to a recap of the first fall camp scrimmage, major scrimmage of 2025. Get an update there from Neil. And then ESPN's David Hale has Cincinnati among his sleeper tier among all 136 FBS programs entering the 2025 season. And we'll close the show with another example of why Cincinnati simply must go bowling this season. Stay tuned to why on this episode of Bearcat Blitz after these messages. Bring Mr. Meyer into the show here now as we welcome on Neil Meyer from the Front Office News. I'm your host of Bearcat Blitz. He's my co-host. I'm your host, Russ Heltman from Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. Neil, I was away at a wedding this past weekend, but you were able to take in the Saturday scrimmage at Nippert Stadium. Just kind of your biggest takeaway from the extensive set of plays between the offense and the defense. A little less scripted than normal, letting them get into kind of a game flow action from everything I've read.
Yeah, and it was great to mention too, Russ. You mentioned you were out at a wedding. I actually was not able to make Saturday. I had VIP tickets to Voice of America. So
well, there you go. We were both tied up this weekend.
JT held it down for us, but I definitely sat down and I had some discussions with him, asked how the team looked on Saturday, got some insight and some notes. It sounded like the defense had a really good day as well, so that's a huge thing. He said the run game was great on the ground, but he said the defensive line held their own and looked very stout up front in the trenches between the likes of Dante Corleone, Micah Coleman, and Jalen Hunt as well, who two of those guys are coming off of season-ending injuries a season ago. So great to see those guys in the mix, but he also mentioned the defense was flying around, making some plays, and it looks like a lot more of those guys in the secondary were starting to get more comfortable in that 3-3-5. So he said the defense had a good day, but from overall, sounds like the offense had a lot of continuity as well. It seems like Brendan Sorsby is getting that connection going with guys like Cyrus Allen, Jeff Caldwell, Caleb Goody. Sound like those guys really were starting to get in the mix, but offense had a good day. I think they had 4 or 5 touchdowns from what JT told me, but great to see Cyrus Allen involved. Obviously, if you guys follow Bearcat Blitz or you follow the social media team for the University of Cincinnati, you saw the post that they posted. Cyrus Allen took a 6-yard screen route or a 6-yard bubble screen and took it to the house. So overall, that was a huge sign to see because, man, Russ, he has the speed where he could be one of those guys you give the ball to on these 2 to 3 yard plays, and he turns it into a home run call for Cincinnati. So overall, a lot of good things to take away from what I was hearing from JT this past weekend.
Yeah, they were out there in the heat, so making sure to get acquainted with that in case there's any major temperature problems they got to deal with, despite being a night game in week 1 against the Nebraska Cornhuskers, obviously playing mid-afternoon September
Hmm.
games throughout non-conference, the rest of the non-conference slate against Northwestern State and the rest of their non-conference opponents there. And it's probably going to be hot for some Big 12 games as well, I would imagine,
Yeah,
for the
I would
Cincinnati Bearcats.
safe to say it's going to be probably 80 through September at least
Right.
here in Cincinnati. So it's going to be a hot one, especially with how this season's been, Russ, this summer's been. I mean, we've seen mid-July days get down to like 75, and then we have yesterday for an example of 92. So overall, I'm kind of curious to see what might be the weather situation like out there in week 1 in Kansas City, but I'm sure it's probably going to be 90 here in a couple weeks out there when we all make the trip out there. And then on top of it, I'm sure it's going to be probably close to 75, 80 throughout the back end of October as well for Cincinnati before that final fall mark where it starts to trend.
Right. You got Nebraska on August 28th, Bowling Green at home on the 6th at 3:30, hot kickoff time. There, same with a 3:30 kick, then following week at home against Northwestern State. And then the conference games, it'll be about every 2 weeks or so before we get a firm kickoff time for those games. Expect this Kansas kickoff time to be announced around September 13th, second week of September, sometime in that range. Neil, went to a couple practices inside of the bubble, and it's not the bubble, inside the new performance facility.
Mm-hmm.
Anything stick out differently with how they're practicing there compared to Nippert, or is it just a matter of having a little bit more space? They can spread the team out a little bit more.
It's honestly kind of unique too, Russ, because I mean, they've had some days out at Nippert and they make the walk from the new IPF all the way to Nippert and then they take the walk back, which is pretty unique. I thought that was pretty cool, but obviously, you and I have been around the University of Cincinnati, the ins and outs of all the athletic complexes and stuff. There's no underground route for these guys to take to get right to Nippert in the locker room. So, overall, I think it's pretty cool to kind of see half of your football team at one point around this time in the morning walking to practice facility or to Nippert Stadium. So during the season, hey, if you guys are walking to class or whatnot, I'm sure they're going to be in the IPF most of the time, but that still would be pretty cool to kind of see them walking through as a college student. But overall, Russ, I think the indoor practice facility, man, I've been blown away every time I've been in there. And we were in there 3 to 4 times last week, but the defensive line group in particularly, Russ, they finish practice, they go do their dynamic stretches to end practice, and they jump right into the weight room. It's been the defensive line group's been the first one in there every time. And even during some of our interviews, if you watch my interview with Coach Hicks and Micah Coleman, you can hear those guys in the background getting in the weight room and they're just slamming weights. So I think that's cool to see. But man, the IPF, it's just so unique. It's so unique. It's so beautiful. It's such a great facility. And it makes you sit back and think every time you walk in there like, man, Cincinnati did this thing right. So overall, it's such a benefit because you walk right off the field, Russ. I kid you not. They have their smoothies waiting right there on the counter in the nutrition center, and that's huge for these guys. So I think that's pretty cool compared to Nippert, where they have to walk back another 5 to 10 minutes or so back to the IPF, depending how sore you are after practice. But I think that's the coolest attribute of practice in the IPF. I mean, heck, Russ, the last few days, Max Fletcher's probably put a hole in the roof of the new IPF somewhere. So safe to say that's also a good sign, as well as some takeaways for Cincinnati.
Good hang time in the punt game. That's going to help that special teams regression to the positive mean get to where it needs to be. And speaking of regressing to the mean, Cincinnati Bearcats have plenty of reason in their profile for this upcoming season to be a bowl eligible team. And on top of that, maybe be a sleeper to compete for the Big 12 championship. One major writer seems to agree with that sentiment as we get to ESPN's David Hale rankings of all 136 FBF teams after this break. And we will also close it out with a look at Cincinnati's 4 toughest opponents in the Big 12 this season and why, compared to other Big 12 teams, might be considered a walk in the park. All that coming up on this episode of Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can wager on the Bearcats to beat the Nebraska Cornhuskers in game one. We'll get the latest odds right now from FanDuel Sportsbook. Cincinnati a minus 105 plus 6.5 point underdog on the spread right now, and still holding firm at plus 190 on the money line, trying to upset the Nebraska Cornhuskers, who widely believed to be, if not a top 25 team, a pretty firm top 35 to top 40 team in the country entering the 2025 season. All that coming up, more coming up on Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Closing up shop on this week's FanDuel Sportsbook presented Bearcat Blitz. We love our presenting sponsor, FanDuel Sportsbook, and some good odds for the Bearcats. If you agree with David Hale, ESPN's David Hale, that Cincinnati is a potential sleeper in the FBS this season. He had Cincinnati in Tier 12, Neil, along with six other teams that are potential sleepers, along with Pittsburgh, Colorado, Houston, North Carolina, Rutgers, and Virginia. And also noted how the Bearcats get more experience this season. They're deeper, and they retain a veteran QB and a major piece on defense in Dante Corleone. Brendan Sorsby has echoed the idea that the Bearcats could make a surprise run this season, Neil, and it feels like some more people are starting to get on board with that as we get closer and closer to the start of the season. And knock on wood, considering how Cincinnati, that depth is staying as strong as ever. There have been no major injuries in fall camp as we go past the halfway point right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing because, I mean, at this time a season ago, Russ, you look down and Cincinnati lost Micah Coleman in the early part of summer workouts last season. Then Jalen Hunt goes down with a knee injury. So, I mean, it's safe to say right now for Cincinnati to be as healthy as they are probably sitting right now at full strength, arguably. There have been no major surprises or any injuries throughout fall camp. So, overall, that is huge for Cincinnati. And on top of it, like you mentioned too, Russ, this Cincinnati team is going to arguably shock a lot of people in the Big 12 this season. And the reason I say that is this group is so connected. And I think you and I, from years past, obviously, we didn't really see a lot of these groups being so bought in. Obviously, within a coaching change, it's never easy finding a group that's so collective because you got half those guys who were recruited under another coach. Half of these guys are the guys that Coach Sat wanted in, per se, as an example. So overall, now that these are all Coach Satterfield's guys, and Russ, you've seen it throughout fall camp, this team is very well knit and very close. Brendan Sorsby and Joe Royer are roommates, so those guys have always been hanging out. Those guys are really close, and that's why that is your best quarterback to tight end duo in the Big 12, and if not, one of the top in all of college football. So it's going to be great to see that, but the thing that's going to keep Cincinnati going is their continuity and their chemistry with this team. And throughout fall camp, man, we've been seeing it so far, not only through on the football field aspect, but off the field as well. Once you're getting to talk to these guys, getting to know them, the biggest thing they mention is how close this team and this coaching staff is heading into year 3 under Scott Satterfield.
And speaking of reasons why Cincinnati has even more kind of requisite reason for people to believe in Cincinnati, I should say, is their 4-game stretch, toughest 4-game stretch, that is. According to PEARatings on X, they posted this over the weekend. Cincinnati, Neil, has the easiest, I mean, by a substantial margin, the easiest 4-game stretch among their toughest 4 games in the Big 12 this season. All Big 12 teams, their toughest 4 games. Cincinnati's toughest 4-game stretch is rated 16th in difficulty. BYU at number 1, according to PEARatings, having to face Iowa State, Texas Tech on the road, TCU at home, and Cincinnati away. 25.8 total cumulative difficulty score there. Cincinnati, Neil, all the way down at number 16 at 13.8, facing Iowa State at home, UCF at home. 1 road game among these 4 at Oklahoma State, and then Baylor at home as well to round out the 4 toughest games. That 13.8 metric, Neil, is 1.4 points lower than Texas Tech, which is that gap between Texas Tech at 15 and UC at 16 is the same point total, 1.4 total gap that you could put between number 12 and number 15, West Virginia and Texas Tech overall. So it's a clear delineation that UC has, I would argue, one of the easier schedules in the Big 12, definitely the easiest, toughest 4-game stretch. And Neil, the big question is Texas Tech going to go undefeated against this 4-game stretch? Because if they do, they're very likely to make it to the Big 12 championship game. And we know how much vaunted talent Texas Tech has accumulated via their NIL structure and their strategy over the past few years. They're a conference tournament or conference title definite contender. And then you have Cincinnati at number 16, who's 33-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook and has a way easier 4-game stretch compared to Texas Tech when you look at the overall breakdown of the pair ratings. Neil, it just goes to show, like, it's another instance of this schedule being served on a platter for the Cincinnati Bearcats in year 3 under Scott Satterfield with all the talent they've accumulated and been able to retain on top of that to at least they better go bowling after the 12-game stint is wrapped up here. And if this program is truly ascending, Neil, I think we should see a 7, 8, 9 win total at least, considering the schedule they're facing and how that they view themselves entering this throughout this fall camp and entering the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look down at Cincinnati's schedule, we've talked about it multiple times, Russ, about how this season could kind of depend on what they do here in week 1 or week 0, quote unquote, versus Nebraska, right? But looking throughout the schedule, Cincinnati's season will come down to that 4-week stretch starting in the month of October. There's 4 games in the month of October. That will be the stretch that could either make or break Cincinnati's season for year 3 heading into Scott Satterfield. I mean, you look down, you mentioned it, Iowa State, UCF, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. And arguably, UCF is projected to finish probably close to the very bottom of the Big 12 conference. A lot of uncertainty down there. Scott Frost coming back, a lot of new players, a lot of new faces. And then Oklahoma State is coming off a season where they went 3-9 and did not win a Big 12 game a season ago. So overall, those 4 games right there, Russ, will make or break for Cincinnati. And the fact is you have 3 of those at home is crucial, especially in the month of October. And if you want to make your way to Dallas and play for a Big 12 championship, those 4 weeks in that month of October, if Cincinnati can find a way to go 4-0 in that month and win versus Iowa State, UCF, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, they should very well be in the conversation to be playing for a Big 12 championship in Dallas later this year. But that,
and if you go 4-0 in that stretch, Neil, you're bowling. You're going to be bowling.
You're
by that point
you're bowling
already.
regardless.
If you're that good a team to go 4-0 there, I would be shocked if that meant you started 1-3 in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Correct.
Like you're going to be at least a 2-win team by that point that you
might
go on
even
that 4-game run.
Might even be a 3-game stretch, considering you have Bowling Green, Northwestern State. We talked about the uncertainty surrounding Kansas football and Lance Leipold's squad out there due to the uncertainty at quarterback. So overall, there's a good chance Cincinnati could be 4-0 heading into that season. They could be 3-1 heading into that slate. But that slate, Russ, will make or break it for Cincinnati in terms of bowl game and in terms of playing for a Big 12 championship down in Dallas.
Interesting numbers from pair ratings. Check them out on X. That's just PEAR ratings. It's kind of they loop the pair and the ratings, the last R and the first R there into one word in the profile. Cool operation there, and a cool look at the toughest 4-game stretches in the Big 12. And just look at the numbers, people. I mean, Cincinnati clearly has the easiest end of the stick on those toughest 4-game stretches. We'll see how it all plays out when those footballs are kicked off throughout the month of October. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heldman. This has been Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Back at it later in the week to get you closer and closer to kickoff against Nebraska on August 28th for the Cincinnati Bearcats football program. Have a great week, everybody.